Hey guys, I'm really sorry about the internet issue. It seems to affect me most in the morning and then get better as the day goes on. So today in class, we looked at the rhetorical planning document that you did yesterday for Teak and Kim's A Queer Vision of Love and Marriage TED Talk. So I just briefly went over everything. Yesterday, I sent you an email with food for thought for determining the intended purpose, and I said think about love as a revolutionary tool and what Teak and Kim were suggesting about that. And remember that that's kind of the driving factor in your entire rhetorical analysis essay. If you don't determine what the intended purpose is, you can't do a good job of telling your audience how the speakers develop that intended purpose. So I said, love and inclusion is a revolutionary tool, and to revolutionize, one must first understand intersectionality and how to accept all identities of themselves and others. And when I talk about intersectionality, that's going to be something we talk about probably about 2 weeks after midterms week. And that's just all of the parts of your identity, right? So for me, I'm a white female who is heterosexual. So all of those factors play a role in my identity, and one doesn't necessarily come before the other. They're all working together to construct my entire identity. Then if you look back up at subject and exigence, of course, you could choose words for yourself. For subject, it's just what is this about? Exigence, I said Teak and Kim's relationship themselves, or itself, sorry, I got a text in the middle that got a little distracted, defining moments that made them reevaluate their own identity, both as individuals and as a couple. And then I identified a few of those, like the miscarriage that Kim suffered and Teak suffered. And at the same time, Teak trying to come to a resolution with his own ego. And then also I identified Teak's mother and her fears for Teak, especially regarding being transgender. Audience, I said people concerned with identity, theirs, a loved ones, etc. People both rigid in definitions of various parts of identity and those seeking more defined borders. One thing that I'm noticing as I'm reading your current events is that some of you are missing the values and beliefs when identifying an intended audience. And because you were looking at specific articles from specific news sources, you were, and I've only graded 2 so far, so forgive me if I'm speaking too soon, but you were identifying a mostly conservative or mostly liberal audience. And that's okay, but there's more to it. What really matters when we're tailoring something for a specific audience is what they believe and what they feel. If we move into rhetorical appeals, that's ethos, logos, and pathos. And if you remember, ethos is all about credibility, logos is all about facts and statistics, and pathos is all about those emotions. And when you identify examples of pathos, please make sure you include which specific emotions are triggered, for a lack of better words, in your audience. I said there was a good mix of ethos and pathos here with a little less logos. Of course, they have the authority to speak on this matter. I'm looking at the ethos box here because they themselves have experienced everything that they're talking about. They're not an outsider reflecting on the experience. And so I've used those 2 opening quotes when they've identified themselves as my examples. I am a transgender man. I am a cisgender queer woman. I moved over to pathos, and I've identified just a few of the emotions that I think were appealed to. I said romantic. Kim early on says he was totally my ideal, and you can really just feel like that playful love that's between them several times. They often break in speaking to the audience and speak to themselves and have a little dialogue. I was especially touched by when Teak apologized to Kim for the way in which he handled their miscarriage. So on that same note, I said it was real and heartbreaking. I've stripped away emotional support instead of facing my own vulnerabilities, particularly around the heartbreaking miscarriage we suffered last year, and I'm sorry for that. I also said it was hopeful, and so living out loud for us is about that representation. It's about having possibility models and having hope that love is part of our inheritance in this world too. Logos, I did identify some examples of logos. When I'm looking at my pie chart, I said that ethos and pathos were pretty well balanced throughout. They were pretty, the 2 of them were pretty equally represented, whereas logos was a little less. I think that they did include some facts and statistics. Specifically, the one I pulled was globally a transgender person is murdered every 21 hours, and the United States has had more trans murders on record this year than any year to date. And I think that that's really important in pushing their purpose, which is all about love as a revolutionary tool. And we can't possibly participate in this love if it's not accepted or if people are facing consequences such as death because of that love. All right, moving into rhetorical strategies, right? Because that's the meat and potatoes of your essay. That's the body paragraphs. In the rhetorical strategies, there's a meter there for diction and syntax. So I'll start with diction. From low to high, I kind of put it somewhere in the middle. Of course, we have to consider the audience when we're thinking about diction. So when I think about more sophisticated diction, I think about a doctor speaking or somebody with very specific jargon, right? A doctor, a psychologist, somebody talking to an audience of peers might be more sophisticated jargon. Significant syntax, simple, varied, or complex. I chose varied. Sullivan made a really good point in class, and he was talking about when the sentences were more complex, it oftentimes was detailing the complexity of the experiences that they had to experience, both as a couple and as individuals. And I thought that was really a beautiful observation. So then you can, of course, choose words and sentences of your own that you find or you found to be very striking. And of course, that transcript is attached to the bottom of that TED Talk. Tone, that's up to you. What tone is specifically, or tones, because I think there's multiple tones that are specifically developed in this TED Talk. To name a few, I put appreciative and celebratory. Okay, and then there's a box for précis, but I told you yesterday you didn't have to do that because you're going to do that today. So at the beginning of class today, or at the middle of class, we went over the rhetorical précis, which we did first for on being a cripple. So I pulled that exact assignment and I moved it into the module for Unit 4. And we just looked at the components of the précis, and I told everybody that was in class that I need them to write a précis for a queer vision of love and marriage by this evening. And I also created an assignment for that. You'll see rhetorical précis, a queer vision, and that's due at 11:59. Now, it's only a few sentences, so I don't think that that's a lot to tackle. I can't apologize enough for the troubles that we're having, especially during first period. I hope that the rest of your classes are going smoothly, and I really hope we get this worked out soon and that I'll be able to see all of you in class tomorrow. Email me if you need anything, and have a good rest of your day.